Hello.
Hello.
Afternoon. Evening, folks. Thank you for coming back after lunch. We know the afternoon slog can be a little bit trickier. We like to have people coming back. We've got a couple of minutes till we'll get started, so I'll just wait for people to join and then we will start with some introductions. Sandra, you're good to do all your screen sharing and things, yeah? You're much more
Fine.
skilled at that than me in the last session.
No problem.
Hi guys that are just joining us. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. The chat function should be enabled, so please feel free to drop us a hello and join in and ask any questions. Hi, Donald.
Hey, Donald.
Amazing people using the chat. That's nice. We like to be talked to. Thank you, guys.
Mhm.
All right, lovely. Well, we will get started. For those of you who haven't been in room four before, welcome. Hello. My name is Katie Lyon. I am one of the PBS practitioners at PBS UK. Um, and it is an absolute privilege to be listening to Sandra's talk this afternoon. I'm secretly very thrilled I get to host this chat, I'm going to be honest. For those of you collecting CEUs, this is a talk that you're able to collect CEUs for. There will be two words that Sandra will give out during her talk. Um, and then you will be sent the links after the session closes to access the CEUs for this talk. Okay, amazing. Sandra, I will hand over to you to introduce.
Super. Amazing. Thanks, everyone. Let me try and share first, see if that works. It's a good start.
Beautiful. Sorry, Sandra, while you're just sharing that. Guys, I would just say if you have specific questions you'd like me to ask Sandra at the end of the session, please use the Q&A function. 'Cause it's a lot easier to track questions in there, and I will put them to Sandra at the end of the talk. Any comments in the chat I will try to keep up with, but any specific questions, try and use the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining today. If anyone doesn't know me, I'm Sandra Bryan. I'm also a PBS practitioner with PBS UK, and I've been working in the field for about 20 years with a variety of different populations. Working with older adults is a more recent part of my practice, but it's become an area that I'm feeling really passionate about. Supporting people with dementia to have the best possible quality of life is really rewarding. I've called this talk When Memory Fades, Meaning Remains, because that's the heart of what I want to share today, really. Dementia can change memory, but it doesn't take away the emotion, the identity, or the need for connection and safety for people. Today, I'll be talking about how PBS can help us understand behaviours of concern in dementia with compassion and empathy, and how small changes can make a really big difference. My interest in dementia is also personal. I spent many years visiting my grandmother in Ireland and supporting her while she lived in care. And that's shaped how I think about dignity, compassion, and what good support and care looks like as well. Just a note before we begin, this presentation does include discussions of dementia, distress, and behaviours of concern. If anything feels emotionally difficult for anyone, please feel free to step out for a moment at any point. I will be discussing case studies as well, and I've anonymized these. I can never say that word. So that's a little bit about me. Let's get into it. I've got notes here, so apologies, I'm not looking directly at the screen, but I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Just to set the context, dementia is affecting a growing number of people across the UK. 982,000 people in the UK live with dementia. Why the increase? The main reason is that these numbers are expected to rise because we have an aging population, and age remains the strongest known risk factor for dementia. Although dementia is more common in people over 65, it's important to remember that it can affect younger people too, although a lot more research is needed in this area. So when we talk about dementia care, we're really talking about many families and services that are already living with and will continue to need support with supporting their loved ones with dementia. So understanding dementia, one key point to start with is that dementia isn't one single condition, it's an umbrella term. It describes a collection of symptoms that are caused by specific diseases which can affect the brain and change how someone remembers, thinks, communicates, and makes sense of their world. Professionals often use the term dementia to describe a set of symptoms such as memory loss, confusion, and difficulties with speech and understanding. that tend to worsen over time. I won't be talking today too much about progression, but yeah, it's obviously progressive disease. And because different types of dementia affect different parts of the brain, people can experience dementia in really different ways. And that's really important when we're thinking about assessment and support for people with dementia. So here are some of the most common types of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common, as you can see on the screen. Many people live with vascular dementia, mixed dementia, and Lewy body dementia and frontal lobe dementia. Understanding the type of dementia can really help us make sense of the person's experience. For example, whether visual hallucinations, which we can describe as seeing things that aren't there, that might be part of what they're living with. And that's quite common with people with Lewy body dementia, but not in other types of dementia. Or personality changes can occur, making people lack empathy or appear cold or maybe rude, which is common with frontal temporal dementia. So understanding dementia, some of the common symptoms, understanding the different types is really helpful so we can tailor support and treatment that is most suitable for the individual. These diseases are progressive diseases. Initially, mild symptoms are present and they progress to more advanced stages of the disease. I'll be discussing some more of the advanced symptoms today, especially in the case studies for the purpose of this presentation. Alzheimer's, often we might see it can affect memory, it can affect forgetfulness, navigation, so people might get lost, and people losing their inhibitions as well. Vascular dementia can involve communication difficulties and concentration difficulties. People with vascular dementia tend to retain more abilities and skills, such as dressing themselves or bathing, so it doesn't affect the whole brain. Lewy body dementia can affect memory, concentration, attention, and ability to judge distances, and visual hallucinations are also present. Some of the signs are similar to Parkinson's, such as muscle stiffness, trembling of limbs, and a tendency to shuffle when walking. And then mixed dementia could be a combination of two or more types of dementia, such as Alzheimer's with vascular dementia or Alzheimer's with Lewy body dementia. Frontal temporal dementia, it can affect behavior and personality. So sometimes the memory remains intact, usually, but it affects emotional responses and people lose their inhibitions. And we'll be talking a little bit about that later. So let me. So what's happening in the brain around dementia? So dementia involves damage and loss of brain skills over time. As that happens, people can lose skills and abilities that feel automatic. Everyday tasks can become really confusing and frightening. And that's really important for us to hold in mind when we see behaviors of concern, because what can look like a refusal might actually be fear, disorientation, or just not understanding what's happening. We're not, they're not in they're in their own world. So different parts of the brain control different functions like language, memory, movement, and vision. So depending on which areas are affected, someone might struggle with things that we take for granted, such as recognizing objects, following steps of a recipe or a task, judging space, or understanding instructions. So the parietal lobe is responsible for functions such as language processing, spatial awareness, and recognition. So damage to the parietal lobe may result in inability to attend to more than one object at a time, difficulty naming objects, reduced awareness of certain body parts, lack of awareness of surrounding space. And these difficulties can significantly impact a person's independence, particularly with self-care tasks, as they may not fully perceive their body, objects around them, or multiple steps within an activity. So personal care could be an issue if people have damage to the parietal lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for behavior regulation, personality, emotional expression, planning, problem solving, and voluntary movement. Damage to the frontal lobe may result in difficulty planning and sequencing complex movements. It might reduce spontaneity in social interactions, and people might have a loss in flexible thinking. It might also affect people repeating the same thought or action over and over again. For example, people might fold clothes and put them into a drawer and then take the clothes out and put them back in and repeat that action over and over again. Or they might say something repetitive. Changes in personality also, and reduced empathy and emotional awareness. And these changes can significantly affect a person's relationship, independence, decision making, and overall social functioning. The temporal lobe is responsible for memory, speech, language comprehension, hearing, and recognizing people and objects. Damage to the temporal lobe may result in difficulty recognizing familiar faces, difficulty understanding spoken language, memory impairments, changes in emotional regulation. The right temporal lobe damage may lead to excessive or persistent talking. In some cases, there could be an increase in impulsivity or in aggressive behaviors. And these changes can significantly affect communication, relationships, and emotional stability. The cerebellum is responsible for balance, posture, coordination, and control of movement. Damage to this could result in loss of coordination with fine motor movements, difficulty walking or having an unsteady gait, difficulty reaching for accurately grasping objects. Slurred or slowed speech can also be common, and these difficulties can significantly impact a person's mobility, independence, communication, and ability to complete everyday tasks safely. And finally, the occipital lobe is primarily responsible for vision and for visual processing. So damage to this can result in difficulty locating objects, difficulty identifying colors, difficulties with visual field loss, potentially, and partial blindness. Visual hallucinations can also be common if there is damage to the occipital lobe. Difficulties with reading and writing due to impaired visual processing is also common. And these changes can significantly affect a person's ability to navigate their environment, recognize objects, and complete visually guided tasks safely and independently. It's a little bit of background. So models in dementia, traditionally dementia has often been understood through a medical lens, focusing on symptoms and impairment. That's important and it has its place, especially for diagnosis and health needs. But the social model reminds us to focus on the person's environment, relationships, and the support around them, and how this can reduce distress or increase it. PBS fits in really naturally with this approach because it helps us to look at the context, the unmet needs, quality of life, and not just symptoms. It also reminds us to think about the full range of support options, not just relying on medication as the only response to distress. This leads me in nicely to talk about this model. Tom Kitwood was a psychologist and gerontologist. He was a pioneer in the field of dementia care. He showed us that when caring for and supporting people with dementia, we must remember these 5 psychological needs. He reminded us that these needs don't disappear with dementia. People still need attachment, identity, occupation, comfort, and inclusion. And when these needs aren't met, distress can show up, sometimes labeled as behaviors of concern. PBS helps us to understand behavior through this lens and plan support that meets needs proactively. So let's discuss the 5 aspects of Kitwood model. Attachment. Attachment is about feeling safe, secure, and emotionally connected to others. It's a fundamental human need throughout life. Dementia can increase anxiety, particularly in unfamiliar environments or around unfamiliar people. So if people are moving into care and they've got unfamiliar people around them, staff supporting them. As memory and orientation change, the world can feel really unpredictable and unsafe. And during these times, consistent and reassuring relationships are really essential. Familiar staff, calm communication, and predictable routines to help reduce stress and promote emotional safety. A key principle of attachment-informed care is respecting the person's emotional reality. If someone's frightened because they believe something's happening, dismissing or correcting them rarely reduces anxiety. Instead, we should validate the feeling behind the experience and offer reassurance. For example, if somebody is experiencing hallucination and they believe somebody's present when others can't see them, rather than saying there's nobody there, it can be more supportive to say, I can see this feels real for you. I'll get rid of the person. Let's sit you down and make sure you're safe. I'm here with you. The aim is not to reinforce the hallucination, but to reduce fear and increase the person's sense of safety and connection. The second one, identity. Identity is about who a person is. It's their story, their roles, their values, their preferences, their routines, their relationships, and the experiences that have shaped them throughout their life. It's what makes the person unique. This includes things like what they like, dislike, what matters to them, what they stand for, previous roles they've held in their life. Were they a parent? What type of worker were they? What type of job did they have? Who are their friends? Do they volunteer? And cultural and spiritual and personal beliefs are also really important. When someone experiences cognitive changes or moves into care, they may start to forget aspects of who they are and feel disconnected from their sense of self. Familiar cues that once reinforced identity, such as home, community, and routines, might no longer be present. It's therefore essential to learn and understand the person's life history. I'm going to be talking about life history quite a lot today because I think it's really important. I know Caroline talked about life experience and sort of getting that background information in her talk this morning. And I think, yeah, I'm going to talk about life history a lot because that's so important to get to know the person and get to know who they were, what their values are, and get to know them as a person. So we can speak to family members and friends to gather meaningful information. Addressing the person by their preferred name as well. Sometimes if people don't have family, and for example, we might have a lady called Elizabeth, but she's been called Liz all her life or Lizzie, and she might not recognize if she's being addressed by the word by Elizabeth. Respecting long-standing routines and preferences, looking for opportunities to incorporate past roles and interests into daily life. So things like memory boxes, which contain familiar objects, photographs, favorite music can also be really powerful. Personal belongings can be really, really powerful for people. It can help them anchor the person to their identity. It can promote emotional security and support a sense of belonging. Oops, that's our first keyword. I didn't realize that was coming so soon. Sweep. SWEEP is your first keyword. Occupation. So occupation is a human need to feel useful, purposeful, and meaningfully engaged. Regardless of age or cognitive change, people still need a sense of contribution and value. When this need is unmet, we might see restlessness, pacing, repetitive behaviours, agitation, and increased behaviours of concern. This is why understanding a person's life history is so important. It allows us to match activities what are to something that's genuinely meaningful for them. For example, if somebody's previously worked as a cleaner, offering them a cloth to wipe tables might feel purposeful rather than task-driven. If someone enjoyed flower arranging and providing flowers to sort, that can have a real deep sense of identity and skill for that person. If somebody worked as a chef previously, getting them involved with meal preparation can be really meaningful for that person. Nice example here. I supported a care home where a gentleman was dismantling furniture and setting off the fire alarm at the same time each day. So staff understandably found this difficult and they were unsure of the reason. Later, staff learned that he had previously worked as an airport engineer, and suddenly his behaviour made sense. He was doing a day's work, and setting off the fire alarm was his way of clocking off. So instead of simply stopping the behaviour, staff adapted their response. They waited by the fire alarm, at his usual clocking off time, and gently explained that the clocking off machine wasn't working, but they would sign him out instead. And he accepted this. Meaningful work activities were also created for him during the day. So his need for occupation was met respectfully and proactively. He used to he used to clock out and then he'd like to sit on the bench outside and have a cigar because that's what he used to do all the time after work, after a day's work. And that was also that was in in his proactive plan as well. That was all in met need for him. Occupation is one of the core psychological needs in dementia care. When we meet the need, we often reduce distress. Supporting occupation is about dignity, meaning, and understanding behaviour through a person-centred lens, not simply managing behaviour. Comfort. Comfort comes from reassurance, familiarity, and feeling settled. A calm environment, predictable routines, and offering meaningful choices can reduce anxiety and help people feel safe. As someone who's half Dutch, I sometimes describe comfort using the Dutch word gezellig. It's difficult to translate this directly into English, but it captures a feeling of cozy togetherness, warmth and emotional ease, and a sense of being safe and settled in the moment. It's really simple. It's really similar to the Danish concept of hygge. In dementia care, creating that feeling can genuinely change how a person experiences their day. This might include soft lighting, comfortable furnishings, familiar routines, a warm drink, gentle background music, or calm and reassuring voices. These small environmental and relational details, they can reduce distress and promote a deep sense of emotional security. Comfort is not just about physical needs, although these are really important. It's about creating an atmosphere where a person feels safe and feels at ease and feels reassured. Inclusion. Inclusion is a need to belong, to feel part of what's happening around us. Dementia doesn't remove this need. If anything, it can make it even more important. As communication and confidence changes, people can become observers rather than participants. There was some research done by Sharp and colleagues in 2019, and they explored lounge layouts in dementia care settings. They found that environments designed to support face-to-face interaction increased communication and engagement, in contrast to large open spaces where chairs are placed around the room, which unintentionally reduced interaction and increased passivity. The physical environment plays a really powerful role in whether someone feels included or isolated. So in practice, inclusion can be simple but intentional. It might involve noticing who's sitting at the edge of the room, gently pulling in chairs closer together to increase that interaction, facilitating face-to-face conversations, bringing someone into a discussion by referencing something meaningful to them. So I know when I did some work, a couple of the ladies loved flower arranging. They talked about it quite a lot. So we would change the conversation and adapt the conversation to include them into the conversation. Ensuring everyone feels seen, acknowledged, and valued is really important. Inclusion is also about active participation, not just about physical presence. It's about creating opportunities for connection, belonging, and shared experiences. So why PBS matters in dementia care? Kitwood's model is a really powerful framework for person-centered care. Building on this, positive behaviour support helps carers to address unmet needs proactively, design environments, routines, and interactions that reduce distress. We can do that alongside the capable environments. Help staff feel more confident and less reactive. It helps us to understand why behaviour is happening. It promotes dignity, compassion, and quality of life, even as those cognitive abilities change. It supports staff to respond with consistency, confidence, and empathy. And it reinforces person-centered, compassionate care, respecting Kitwood's principles of attachment, identity, occupation, comfort, and inclusion. Behaviours of concern. Understanding behaviours of concern. So what are people communicating? When we observe behaviours of concern within dementia, such as repetitive questioning, restlessness, or physical behaviours of concern directed towards others, it might help to ask, what might this behaviour be communicating? Often these behaviours reflect fear, pain, confusion, boredom, the need for reassurance. They usually indicate that one or more of the 5 elements of Kitwood's model aren't present or aren't being met or are disrupted. So PBS encourages us to zoom out and ask what the person might be experiencing. So for example, factors that might influence a person's behaviour, the person's past. So knowledge, again, of life history is so important. People with dementia tend to live in past memories. People may respond to what feels real to them. Sometimes that's a past role, a past home, a past fear. And our support needs to meet them where they are, whether they're in the past or they're in the present. The environment, looking at the environment is also really important for people with dementia. Again, is it too noisy? Is it too busy? Is it too bright? A nice example I heard on a podcast is, have you ever gotten up in the night and to go to the toilet and it's dark and you see a pile of clothes in the corner and you instantly think, oh, there's a cat or a dog lying there. We realize quickly that isn't there, but people with dementia might not be able to process that, and it can actually genuinely frighten them. So being aware of clutter in people's environments is really important. And visual perceptions in dementia as well, when we look at the environment, patterns and high contrast carpets and wallpapers can sometimes be misinterpreted by people with dementia, because high contrast wallpaper could sometimes appear as holes, or if you have high contrast patterns on the floor, it could appear as a hole in the floor or that the floor is moving, which can feel really unsafe or alarming for people with dementia. So there's an entire field of dementia-friendly architecture and design, which use high contrast colors on walls, doors, and furniture to reduce this confusion and improve safety for people with dementia. Another common visual perception issue is mirrors. Some people with dementia may not recognize themselves, and instead they might see an unfamiliar person looking back at them. And this can be frightening, as if it might be as if a stranger is watching them, or they think a stranger might be in their room. Alternatively, some people might look in the mirror and enjoy their reflection and think they have a new friend, and they might interact with the person without realizing it's their own image, or they might have remembered themselves looking a different way. So being aware of these visual perception changes helps staff and carers anticipate distress, adapt the environment accordingly for the person, and support safety while maintaining comfort and engagement. Difficulty understanding tasks. This can be really frustrating for people. In the podcast I've been listening to with dementia, on the dementia perspective, it's in my references. A man in his 50s with frontotemporal dementia, who'd been a carpenter for years. He moved house and he could not figure out how to start building a flat pack table, something that would have been really easy for him in the past. But once his wife supported him with the first few steps, he was able to continue. But the problem was starting and sequencing the task. So he needed support with that. Health. Is the person in pain or uncomfortable, but unable to tell us? The person might be in discomfort due to infection, constipation, hunger, or fatigue. Insight impairment. This refers to the reduced ability to recognize or understand one's own difficulty, which can be common in frontotemporal dementia. This is often associated with changes or damage to frontal lobes of the brain, which are responsible for reasoning, judgment, and self-awareness. As a result, the person may not realize that something's wrong or that they're experiencing difficulties. For example, they might be in denial that they have dementia, which can lead to refusal of medication or refusal of support. Similarly, individuals with mobility difficulties may not be able to recognize their physical limitations, so they might attempt to stand or walk independently without assistance, increasing their risk of falls. Disinhibited behaviors. Sometimes dementia can reduce a person's inhibitions, especially when insight is affected. This might look like rudeness, saying inappropriate things, approaching strangers, undressing in public, or changes in sexual behavior. Often the person doesn't recognize it as unusual or inappropriate. It's part of the change in the brain function. Sundowning. This is a term for changes in behavior that occur in the evening and dusk. Can occur at other times of the day as well, but it's most common at these times. Some people with dementia experience a growing sense of agitation or anxiety around this time. This can happen for a number of reasons. The person might become tired as the day progresses. They might be in pain as the day progresses again, or they're hungry, it's coming up to dinner time. As it gets dark, people settle down for the night. It can make people with dementia feel that they're in the wrong place or they've forgotten to do something really important. For example, I'd pick their children up from school. There's one lady in the care home that I was working in, and she would say, I need to pick my children up, and that would always be around this time. Another care home I visited, staff take a really creative approach and support residents who experience sundowning. In the evenings, night staff come in, but they'll change into their pajamas to help create a calm, cozy atmosphere and provide a gentle visual cue that it's time to wind down, and that works really well for the people there. So some of the most common PBS interventions, remembering the focus on reducing distress before it escalates and supporting the person to remain as independent as possible is important. We want to maintain that independence and not create dependence. There are many ways we can support people with dementia effectively. Some of the strategies might include breaking down tasks into smaller steps, especially around personal care tasks. So people doing personal care tasks back to back, brushing their teeth, continence changes, showering, that can be really overwhelming for people with dementia. Can be overwhelming for all of us. But breaking all that down into smaller steps and taking breaks in between it can be really helpful. Modeling tasks or individual steps of task analysis. So creating task analysis for each of the different personal care activities can be helpful for staff. Applying least to most prompting strategies, allowing additional processing time for people, offering alternatives where needed, such as a different activity or a different environment, adjusting the environment, and using visual support to communication. An example, giving a person time to process what's being asked, using a least to most prompting approach and fading prompts really quickly to avoid that, creating that dependence. It might look like lightly guiding the person's arm towards a sleeve rather than repeatedly telling them to put their arm in. It might be placing a hairbrush gently into somebody's hand to initiate them to start brushing their hair. And people, we hear about people talking about wanting to go home, and this is really common. People will say this and ask this, and often it means I want to feel safe. I want something familiar, and something doesn't feel right. So rather than saying you live here now, your home is sold, for example, or your home's not available anymore, we can support the person by offering home comforts, a cup of tea, a favorite item, a blanket, or a photo, anything that provides that familiarity and reassurance rather than interpreting it literally. Sorry, bear with me. um, Sorry, yeah, and just referencing back to Kitwood's model, Kitwood's model can help us identify and guide these interventions as well. So when we're thinking about attachment, supporting staff to create predictable routines, consistent activity schedules, and ensuring that everyone's got that consistent response to hallucinations or distress, helping the person feel safe can be really important. Identity, so giving people choices around clothing, hairstyles, and other personal preferences, and gathering that life history again is so important because we can honor the person's sense of self by gathering that information. Occupation, again, life history, making sure we have that knowledge to involve the person in meaningful tasks and purposeful activities. Comfort, so making sure we're improving lighting, reducing background noise, and providing clear visuals to enhance well-being. Inclusion, including the person in meaningful activities and supporting opportunities for social connection and interaction. Another important intervention is therapeutic misinformation. This can feel really uncomfortable for staff at first, but it's really about protecting well-being and reducing repeat distress. So, for example, if somebody's experiencing hallucination, we don't want to insist on factual reality. We aren't in their world. People experience a whole different world with dementia. Instead, we can guide them safely and calmly, like I spoke about before. For example, let me get the person out of here if somebody's visualizing that there's somebody else in the room. You sit down here, I'll make you a cup of tea. So this respects their experience while maintaining that safety. Memory loss of a loved one. If a person with dementia doesn't remember that a close family member has passed away, repeatedly correcting them can cause that repeated grief for the person. So instead, we can use life history to acknowledge memories and emotions. So tell me more about your mum, we might say. I'd love to hear about her, and look at photographs and share memories allows that connection without distress. We just talked about going home as well, so that can be a therapeutic kind of misinterpretation as well, or misinformation, sorry. And sometimes choosing kindness over truth is the most compassionate response. According to TAN in 2020, ethically, therapeutic misinformation can be appropriate when it's used to act in the best interests of the person with dementia and to promote their well-being. However, many staff experience guilt when using it, as professional and ethical guidance often emphasizes telling the truth. In practice, staff may determine that a therapeutic lie is the best option, particularly if being fully truthful could lead to distress or negative outcomes. So sensory stimulation ideas, another important intervention, especially in dementia care, is sensory stimulation, which can include music therapy. This can have a real profound effect on emotions. It can be really comforting. Music can also sometimes evoke negative emotions if a song reminds a person of a difficult time in their life or of somebody who has passed. So staff should be mindful of personal preferences and emotional associations when using sensory interventions, because that can be the case for aromatherapy as well, certain smells. Aromatherapy, certain scents can evoke strong memories and emotions. Lavender or peppermint can have a really calming effect. Tactile activities, so clay modeling, knitting, sorting buttons, sewing, um, visual stimulation, being out in the garden and watching flowers. One of the ladies in one of the care homes I've supported, she loves watching the flowers in the wind, and that can be really calming. Fish can also be a really nice thing to watch if there's a fish tank in the lounge. That can be nice to watch. And birds. So one of the care homes has around as topic of conversation as well for people, and it can be soothing. Pet therapy as well, interaction with animals have been shown to reduce stress for people. Sensory changes are a normal part of aging, but dementia can really amplify them. And this can affect how people interpret what they see, hear, and feel, sometimes increasing distress. Sensory support can be really powerful. It's really important. I'd love to do a whole talk on sensory approaches, but it's not what today is about. But even simple approaches often help people feel calmer, more connected, and more engaged. Second keyword, umbrella. We've got UMBRELLA. So I've got two case studies I'm going to discuss. I'll introduce Darla and Liz, two lovely ladies I've been supporting the last few months. Darla has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's and Liz has a diagnosis of Lewy body dementia. So Darla had a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and was referred to us for frequent swearing and hitting other residents. So some of the assessment and background work that we did, I met with Darla's family and staff to understand her life history, her preferences, and her dislikes. She loved to dance when she was younger, and she has medals in a memory box that she previously won for dancing competitions, and she's so proud of them when she takes them out. They're really important to her. She previously also worked as a carer in a care home for people with dementia. So she sometimes bosses the staff around. She loves banter and she's got the best sense of humor, and the staff are creating those relationships with her now as well and creating that banter. So she'll tell people when they haven't done something properly or if they've not cleaned something properly. But her behaviours of concern included shouting, swearing loudly, hitting other residents, and following observations and discussions with Darla, staff and her family. I completed a functional behaviour assessment after doing all the life history work. And some of the findings indicated that her behaviours of concern were sometimes linked to social interaction and connection. So she had that preferred type of banter and interaction style that she wasn't receiving from some staff members. So we did workshops and we worked with the staff to educate staff around how to use that interaction style. And she was quite new to the care home as well. So staff were getting to know her as well, and we were all getting to know her. But this helped considerably. Avoiding demands. So especially during personal care was a really difficult time for her. So I'll talk about sort of outcomes in a minute and what we did. Environmental factors, so overwhelming stimuli such as loud, unexpected noises from other residents and maybe from televisions was also a factor for her. So my plan focused on meeting her needs proactively with Kitwood's model in mind. So attachment and consistent relationships. We ensured continuity with her one-to-one staff, which she had, which was great because we were able to work with a core staff team to build that trust, understand her banter style really as well, which was really helpful. So we put examples of the type of banter she liked into our proactive plan. We did workshops, so all staff were aware of that type of banter. Occupation and engagement. So introducing meaningful activities, having access to an activity box at her table near her favorite chair, where she enjoyed exploring this activity box when she was unoccupied. She was also really close to the window, so she could see the birds. She loved watching the birds. She does love watching the birds. In the bird feeders, and she likes watching them fly around. But this activity box was really helpful for her when she was unoccupied, so she could just access that whenever she wanted, and the staff would change things in that activity box. She also engages in caring for dolls, so she has these very realistic dolls, which she calls her babies, and this supports her purpose and identity. Drawing on her previous role as a care assistant, She loves bathing them and dressing them. It gives her a sense of meaning. So lots of meetings with the activity coordinator in the home led to tailor activities for her, which were meaningful and achievable. And she used to love sewing when she was younger as well. She'd sew all her children's clothes, but due to her having arthritis in her fingers, we um, we found some different activities for her to do, some easier sort of sewing activities. Communication support. So visuals were created to assist her and staff during personal care. Task management. Tasks were broken down for her into smaller elements, especially around personal care, into manageable steps. And we went through these with staff. Humor and reassurance. So examples of her sense of humor, again, like I mentioned, and preferred type of banter and interaction were incorporated. Environmental adjustments, noise levels were monitored, and she was offered quieter spaces when she needed, such as her bedroom. She liked going to her bedroom. She had her memory box there, and she has lots of photos of her family. So that's got a nice place for her to go with her one-to-one. And she enjoys talking about the photographs on her wall. We also devised the PERMA model for Diala. For those of you who don't know what the PERMA model is, PERMA is a model of well-being devised by psychologist Martin Seligman, and it was first proposed in his book Flourish in 2011. The PERMA model defines well-being as 5 interacting elements. P is for positive emotion. So for Darla, we identified activities and interactions that bring her joy and contentment. E was for engagement, exploring activities that capture Darla's attention and absorb her. Such as her activity box and caring for her dolls. These were important for her. R is for relationships, so recognizing key people in her life and ways to foster positive interactions and relationships. M is for meaning, supporting roles and tasks that give her a sense of purpose, drawing on her previous work experience, again, having that life history. It's really important for meaning. A, accomplishments, encouraging achievable goals and providing opportunities for her to feel successful. And some of the outcomes over the last few months, Darla's, she's much more settled. She's smiling, she's laughing more, she's engaging in more activities. There's also been a reduction in her behaviours of concern, indicating that proactive, person-centred interventions combined with meaningful engagement are really effective in supporting her well-being. So um, Liz has a different story, and I chose these two because they've got different types of dementia. And I thought, so Liz has a diagnosis of Lewy body dementia. She was referred due to her visual hallucinations and delusions and behaviours of concern, such as shouting. So Liz experiences delusions, which are ideas or thoughts that are imagined, often resulting in fear or suspicion. They're not based in reality, but feel very real to the person with dementia. Liz has previously believed that her food has been poisoned, so she often prefers unopened packets of food, so she can open them herself. She also worries that people are stealing her money. Staff reassure her that her money is safe, that nobody else has access to it, and she always carries her own bank cards for that reassurance. So she's got that visual to see that her bank cards are safe and in her handbag. So she carries her handbag around with her. Liz has a history of trauma, which can influence her emotional responses. So to start, I met with her daughter again to gather life history, her preferences, and her personal background. So during hallucinations, again, I did a few direct observations and a look through care plans and support plans and all of the daily notes. And during hallucinations, Liz, she might attempt to pick items up that aren't there. She might talk to people or objects that aren't present, including flowers. Sometimes she'll go over to a bunch of flowers and she might have a conversation with them. She might appear frightened of lights, shadows, or doors. She might bang on walls or doors while crying or shouting. She might enter other residents' rooms and ask for her family members. And she might express fear that someone is trying to hurt her. So some of the functional behavior assessment findings, this was quite a brief assessment because Liz was quite nervous around new people. So this I involved speaking to a lot of staff and speaking to speaking to the family. But some of the outcomes of the functional behavior assessment were sensory and perceptual processing difficulties. So Liz's behavior are responses to altered sensory processing and perceptual disturbances which are associated with her Lewy body dementia. This reflects her lived experience of fear, confusion, and emotional distress. Examples include picking up non-existent items and talking to objects. Escape and avoidance was another factor for Liz. She may engage in behaviors of concern to avoid or escape overwhelming situations, activities or interactions, particularly during personal care again or staff changes. And some of the patterns and triggers that we noticed, her increased behaviors of concern were observed during personal care, and the doorbell ringing, which was interesting, and evenings as well, which were consistent with sundowning. So when that light changes. So some of the interventions for Liz in her PBS plan focused on reducing distress, supporting her well-being and promoting independence. So lots of validation and reassurance, and ensuring all staff were providing consistent responses when Liz was having these visual hallucinations or delusions. And that was really important, just to make sure everyone had that uniform response so that she felt safe and supported. Gentle redirection, using meaningful prompts such as photos and familiar topics. She loves dogs and she has lots of books of different types of dogs. And she loves looking through these with staff, and these really help her feel calm and settled. She loves music as well. She particularly loves Elvis, so she loves dancing as well. She's a great dancer. And these help her feel safe and grounded. Um, Environmental adjustments for Liz. So maintaining consistent lighting, especially in her bedroom where she likes to spend a lot of time. Reducing shadows, so looking at the lighting in her room and trying to reduce shadows. Minimizing clutter. So again, we talked about that visual perception of that pile of clothes. It might look like something in the dark. So minimizing that in her room is important. Covering reflective surfaces. So if the television is being unused, covering that so it doesn't reflect. I also spoke to the team about changing the doorbell tone to a softer, less startling sound to reduce that anxiety for her and sudden sensory overwhelm. And also staff support. So this, I did conduct some debriefs with staff because we emphasize the importance of staff having these debriefs, because this can be emotionally difficult, and it can be emotionally demanding, this work. Visual supports were also created for Liz, if she needed to request her favorite food or drinks, or objects to support choice making. So she is verbal, but just having those visual supports were just an extra measure for her to be able to request what she wanted, because sometimes she couldn't remember the word or she couldn't find the word she was looking for. Familiarity and reassurance. So Liz can visit the kitchen to meet the chef and watch the food being prepared safely, to support reducing that anxiety. And this helped. So she will now eat food from the kitchen. Sometimes she'll still request her packet food. So she's got that option, but she will eat meals now from the kitchen, which is nice to see. Body language awareness, especially this is important for all people with dementia, but particularly for Liz, making sure staff were approaching her from the side, from the front, so not the side or behind, because this could startle her and increase her anxiety. Approaching from the front, making gentle eye contact and using a really calm tone, just helped her feel safe and secure. I conducted a perma plan for her as well, focusing on all of the elements of well-being, with particular emphasis on supporting her to be engaged in meaningful activities throughout the day and maintaining her independence wherever possible. Identity and appearance. So Liz, she really values her appearance. She loves having her hair done. She always comes down with different bows and different hairstyles. So that's really important to her. And dressing well is also really important to her. She always has sparkly tops on and just looks fantastic. And just keeping that identity for her is really important, and making sure she's got those choices of what she wants to wear. Some of the outcomes for Liz, she does appear more settled due to consistent validation and reassurance from staff when she's experiencing hallucinations or delusions. She displays reduced anxiety through gentle redirections as well through meaningful prompts. So her photographs, her books of her dogs, familiar music to make her feel grounded and safe, because that's really important for her. Opportunities to visit the kitchen and see food preparation provided reassurance, leading, like I mentioned, to improved mealtime engagement and reduced questioning or worry about food safety. These experiences increased engagement and connection throughout the day. So I had meetings with the activity coordinator and we looked at different activities for her. And again, maintaining that dignity and identity as well around personal care and around the clothing she chooses and the fact that she likes to dress up. She likes to walk around in high heels. She's got lots of shoes and she's very proud of her appearance. Um, and that gives her that self-worth and pride, and it contributes to her overall well-being. So people always compliment her on what she's wearing, which she loves, and she gets a lot of satisfaction out of. So I talked about life history a lot. I really want to underline how central life history is. And we do include it on the front of the All About Me slash PBS plan to ensure that the document's really person-centered and highlights the person's identity. So these are some of the key areas that are captured. So the preferred name, what does the person prefer to be called? People who know them best, hobbies and interests that they used to enjoy, important items and keepsakes, jobs and achievements from their past, favorite places and colors, important dates, fears and dislikes. So when we know someone's preferences, fears, and what's mattered to them, we can support them in ways that are meaningful, respectful, and proactive. This knowledge helps prevent distress before it builds and ensures that it truly honors the person behind the diagnosis. So I think I've still got quite a bit of time, but just to summarize, dementia, it might change memory, but it does not erase meaning. Behaviors of concern are often expressions of unmet need, fear, confusion, discomfort, or distress. PBS provides a compassionate framework to understand behavior in context and create interventions that enhance quality of life for the person, even for the person with dementia, their families, and for staff supporting them. And Kitwood's model is an essential tool to ensure that care is person-centered, protecting the person's identity, dignity, and sense of self. PBS has helped me to slow down and focus on the person behind the diagnosis. I've seen how interventions such as building trusting relationships by developing strong, consistent relationships between staff and the individuals living with dementia, familiarity and predictability, it helps to build trust and promote emotional safety and reduce anxiety for the people with dementia. Environmental adjustments to reduce distress. Thoughtful adaptations to the environment can really significantly reduce confusion and sensory overwhelm, providing comfort and overall well-being for the person. And again, protecting identity and understanding life history, taking the time to explore a person's life story, their values, their roles and preferences, ensuring that care remains person-centered. Preserving identity supports dignity, continuity of self, and emotional security. And promoting inclusion and meaningful relationships. So ensuring individuals remain socially included and connected helps prevent isolation and reinforces their sense of belonging and purpose. And creating a warm, homely environment is so important. A comfortable, cozy setting with personal belongings and familiar items enhances feelings of safety and reassurance, particularly during periods of confusion and distress. Providing meaningful engagement and purposeful activity, opportunities for structured, interest-based activities, promote engagement, reduce boredom-related distress, and support cognitive and emotional well-being. And ensuring goals are socially valid as well. So goals should be meaningful to the individual, enhancing quality of life, independence, dignity, personal satisfaction, rather than focusing solely on reducing behaviours of concern. And what we have found is that if we implement all these well-being, the PERMA model, for example, and we make those environmental changes, sometimes behaviours of concern reduce automatically. These can make a real difference to someone's life and overall quality of life. Um, so even when memory fades, people still feel connect and matter. It's how we respond in those moments that truly shapes their experience. Here are some references. I finished a little bit early. My email address is there if anyone's got any questions. Thanks
That's
for
amazing, Sandra. Thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to your talk because I find it really, really fascinating, particularly with the background discussion going on of the populations that PBS can be used to support. And I think one of the questions that I had that I think is really pertinent, I hear a lot of people very concerned around staying within their area of competence, validly so. So what steps did you take to make sure that actually you were confident in your ability to apply PBS within this population you're working with?
So I did a dementia level 3 course because I didn't have experience with this population before. So I wanted to educate myself. So I made sure that I had the knowledge and was able to support the people in the best possible way.
That's amazing. Yes, it's that going out and getting that additional knowledge and educating ourselves as much as we can in that area as well.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I think that's really important.
Fab. Thank you, Sandra. We do have a couple of questions if we can keep you for a few more moments. So Scott has popped in the Q&A. Thanks, Scott. Saying that he's had to support some people who've had to leave their homes because of the dementia and associated behaviours of concern. What would you say is the most important aspect to consider when transitioning somebody that's experiencing dementia to a new setting or a new home?
I think bringing that life history, I know I've mentioned it about 20 times, but I think it's so, so important. I think really that's how we know the person and that's how we can help the person feel safe and regulated. Um, and I think but yeah, knowing that life history and bringing those personal belongings that the person has from a previous home or from somewhere they previously called home or photographs as well and memory boxes, I think are really important. Um,
Nice, nice. Thank you, Sandra. Another question we had was around the case studies you chatted through of the two ladies you've been working with. When you met the staff teams, were they already familiar with PBS, or was it quite a new sort of concept to them? And if so, how receptive were they to your sort of approach and suggestions?
they were new to PBS and yeah, as a staff team, they were new to PBS. The company wasn't new to PBS, but the staff team were just in that particular context as well. So um, we did some training around the PARMA model and just increasing quality of life for people and engagement. And that was a nice buy-in for some of staff because I think staff saw how that worked. We put it in action. So I practice led with people as well. So we brought activities in and did that with the ladies, and that really helped
That's really
to get that
nice.
buy-in.
Yeah. Well, the PERMA model, from my understanding of what you're saying about the Kitwood model, they correlate so closely. Like they're very, very in tune, aren't they? They're very aligned in their
Buy-in
sort of
quite nicely.
values and priorities.
Definitely, definitely. And again, that life history. So putting those, yeah, occupational skills from the Kitwoods model into the Prima model as well.
Amazing, amazing. There's a few comments coming through, lots of thank yous. Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks, everyone.
Somebody has said that along with the Kitson model, they would encourage people to look at David Sheard, I hope I'm saying that right, and the Butterfly Project.
Oh,
I'm not familiar with it at all, so I'll personally go and look at that. Thanks, Sammy. Thank you for the tip there. The other question I had, Sandra, was around when you were talking about I'm probably going to call it the wrong thing now, so apologies, but the sort of the therapeutic misinformation. And you were saying that obviously some staff ethically found that quite challenging, which I can completely understand. You can sort of see both perspectives there, can't you? Was there any specific support needed for the staff that were sort of encouraged to engage in that, or was that just part of the sort of wider debrief process?
it was part of the wider debrief process, and I think managers in the particular care home where I was are very good at debriefing staff and having those team meetings with staff. Um, it is a really, really it's a really difficult topic for staff, and it can be really, really hard, especially when they haven't worked with this population before.
Mm.
Um, But I think having MDTs and having meetings with family and just having the person's best interest at heart is really important. And just making
Yeah.
sure everybody's involved. And 'cause obviously we don't want to re-trigger any
No, of
difficult
course.
life events for people. So Yeah, I think explaining that to staff and just having regular team meetings and MDTs with everyone so everybody's involved and the family members are involved too.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Sandra. And there was one last comment from James. Sorry, James. I know you popped your question on there first. And he was saying that he's recently been looking at sort of the balance between personhood and PBS. And he'd been looking at the VIPS model, um, which he was asking about whether we also saw that as sort of supporting PBS. Now, I'm going to be honest, James, I'm not personally familiar with the VIPS model, but I've had a little look in the background while Sandra's been talking. And it sort of looks at the four key elements of valuing people, individualized care, perspectives of the person, and then the social environment.
Okay.
So on a very surface level, I would say it looks like it would map with the
Yeah,
PBS approach. I wouldn't want to sort of say 100% yes because I simply don't know enough about it. But it's definitely one to go away and have a deeper look into. I think it'd be really interesting. It seems to draw also on the Kitwas model that you were talking about, Sandra. It links, there's a paper that links really nicely with those two together.
amazing.
So that's really
I will
interesting.
check that out. Thank you for that recommendation.
Amazing. I think that's all the questions. Apologies if I've missed somebody. Um, Sandra, thank you so much. There's lots of people saying thank you in the comments. So, oh, that would be really nice, James. James is happy to chat outside of this. That would be really lovely, James. Thank you. If you could drop us an email at PBS UK, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much. Have a lovely afternoon, guys. We'll see you for the last
Thank
session,
you, Sam.
hopefully. Sandra, thank you.
Thank you.